Imagine parking your car for the night. Hours later, it erupts into flames without warning. More than 1.1 million vehicles across 12 major models, from Jeeps to Chevrolets, now carry urgent NHTSA fire warnings so severe that owners are being told not to use their garages at all. Why are everyday cars suddenly branded high risk, even when parked and silent? The answer begins with the hidden science driving these park outside mandates, and what you learn next could decide the safety of everything and everyone inside your home. A lithium-ion battery, sealed tight under the floor of a modern SUV, looks like a fortress against danger. But inside every cell, layers thinner than a sheet of paper keep powerful forces apart. The key barrier, the separator, sits between the positive and negative electrodes, blocking direct contact while letting ions flow. If that separator is damaged, even by a microscopic tear during manufacturing, the result can be catastrophic. The electrodes touch, and a sudden internal short circuit triggers a chain reaction. This is not a slow process. In controlled lab tests, researchers forced a short in a battery module like those found in recalled plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles. Within just 12 seconds, the cell temperature shot upward, crossing 200 degrees Celsius, then racing higher. The electrolyte inside begins to boil, venting toxic gases and building pressure. If the heat is not stopped, the cell can rupture, spraying molten material and flames. This is called thermal runaway, a runaway reaction that jumps from one cell to the next, sometimes engulfing the entire battery pack in minutes. Dr. Elena Rossi, a battery safety specialist at the University of Michigan, describes the process as a microscopic domino effect. Once a separator fails, the cell cannot protect itself. The energy has nowhere to go except into heat, she explains. If enough cells go at once, the pack can self-ignite even if the car is parked and powered off. In the field, fire investigators have found that these battery fires often start with no external trigger. No crash, no flood, no faulty wiring outside the pack, just a silent, invisible defect deep within a single cell. The NHTSA recall notices for the Jeep Wrangler 4xe and Chevrolet Bolt point to this exact scenario: separator damage, internal short, runaway heat, and a fire that can erupt hours after the car is parked. In some documented cases, the vehicle had already received a recall repair, but the underlying flaw remained hidden. Forced short tests conducted by university labs confirm how little warning there is. In one experiment, a single puncture in the separator led to a rapid spike in temperature and pressure, breaching the cell casing before any external alarms could sound. The resulting fire can be intense enough to melt surrounding metal and plastic, and once thermal runaway starts, it is nearly impossible to stop without specialized firefighting equipment. This is why NHTSA warnings are so severe. A battery pack with even one compromised cell can become a source of ignition, regardless of whether the car is running, charging, or simply parked for the night. The science leaves no room for complacency. Until a permanent fix is engineered and installed, the only safe move is to park outside, away from anything that could catch fire. A battery fire is not the only way a parked car can turn deadly. Across the models under NHTSA's fire warning spotlight, engineers have traced ignition sources far beyond the battery cells. In some cases, the threat begins with a single drop of water. Modern vehicles route miles of wire through tight spaces, underbody panels, wheel wells, and trunk linings, where even a minor breach in insulation can open the door to disaster. When water seeps into a connector or harness, the electrical resistance that should keep circuits safe can collapse in seconds. Laboratory analysis from Oak Ridge National Laboratory found that, under wet conditions, insulation resistance in a typical automotive harness can plunge from 10 million ohms to just 2,000. That is enough to allow current to arc across the gap, generating sparks that can ignite nearby materials. The Hyundai Tucson recall draws a sharp line under this risk. More than 51,000 Tucson sport utility vehicles built between 2022 and 2024 were flagged after investigators found that the optional tow hitch wiring harness was vulnerable to water intrusion. When rainwater or car wash spray reached the control module, it could short the circuit, creating a sustained arc. In one documented incident, this arc ignited the plastic fuel line running just inches away. The resulting fire destroyed the vehicle before firefighters could arrive. The National Fire Protection Association has long warned that gasoline vapor can reach its lower flammable limit at just 1.4% concentration in air, meaning even a small leak, combined with a spark, is enough to trigger an explosion. This is not an isolated flaw. Chrysler Pacifica hybrids faced a similar hazard, not from water, but from a fuel line that could leak under pressure. If gasoline escapes and finds a hot surface or a stray spark from a worn component, the flashpoint is easily crossed. BMW 3 Series recalls highlight another path, an engine starter motor that, after thousands of cycles, can overheat and throw sparks into a pool of oil or coolant. Each of these cases shares a common thread: fire risk from external shorts or fuel vapor ignition, not just battery failure. Fire investigators and engineers now treat any path that brings electricity, fuel, and air together as a potential ignition source. The technical reports make it clear water-damaged wiring, leaking fuel lines, and worn starters can all produce fires in vehicles that are parked, powered off, and seemingly safe. The result is the same urgent warning: park outside, away from anything flammable until repairs are made. For owners, the risk is not just theoretical. A single unnoticed wiring fault or fuel leak can turn a garage or carport into a hazard zone. These non-battery recalls prove that fire danger is not limited to electric vehicles or hybrids. Gasoline models, plug-in hybrids, and even conventional vehicles are all on the list. In every case, NHTSA's message is blunt. If your car appears in a fire risk recall, it does not matter what is under the hood. The only safe place is outside. Jeep's plug-in hybrid lineup sits at the heart of the current fire risk crisis. In November 2025, Stellantis and the NHTSA announced recall 25V741, targeting both the Wrangler 4xe and the Grand Cherokee 4xe. The recall covers 320,065 vehicles built from model years 2020 through 2026, one of the largest high-voltage battery recalls ever issued for plug-in SUVs. The problem is not theoretical. Stellantis confirmed that fewer than 10 fires have already occurred in this fleet. All were traced back to the same hidden flaw, a damaged separator inside the lithium-ion battery pack. The recall documents spell out the risk in blunt terms. A single microscopic tear in the separator can let the positive and negative electrodes touch, shorting the cell and triggering thermal runaway. This can happen whether the car is driving, charging, or simply parked. Owners have reported vehicles bursting into flames hours after being shut off, sometimes even after previous recall repairs. The danger is so severe that Stellantis and the NHTSA have ordered every affected owner to park outside and away from buildings. No exceptions and no charging until a permanent fix is ready. Stellantis safety lead Maria Gonzalez explained that the root cause traces back to a variance at a single battery supplier. The company is now working to develop a new inspection and replacement process for every suspect cell. But as of December 2025, no final remedy exists. Owners received letters warning them not to use garages or carports and to wait for a second notice once repairs are available. The recall paperwork makes clear: there is no supply chain delay because the engineering fix itself is still in development. For Jeep 4xe owners, this means living with the constant risk of fire, even when the vehicle is parked and powered off. The NHTSA's official advisory leaves no room for doubt. Until the repair is completed, these SUVs are banned from enclosed parking. The scale is massive, and the timeline for a solution remains uncertain. For now, the safest move is to keep these vehicles far from anything flammable day and night. On October 29, 2023, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration issued a sweeping consumer alert for the Chevrolet Bolt EV. Owners of all 50,932 Bolt vehicles built between 2017 and 2022 were told to park outside, regardless of whether their car had already received a previous recall repair. The warning followed 3 separate fire incidents, each involving a bolt that had supposedly been fixed under earlier recall campaigns. In each case, the vehicle caught fire while parked, powered off, and not charging. Fire investigators traced the source back to the high-voltage battery pack, where a hidden defect allowed an internal short circuit to trigger thermal runaway. The fires moved fast. One owner in Ohio reported that it took firefighters half an hour to fully extinguish the battery, even with specialized foam. General Motors engineers, led by Tom Huang, acknowledged that the earlier recall remedy had not eliminated the risk. In a technical note shared with the agency, General Motors revealed that some battery modules contained latent flaws that escaped detection during the initial repair process. These flaws could remain dormant for months, then suddenly ignite without warning. The new recall expands the scope to every Bolt EV in the United States, regardless of previous service history. The company is now working on a redesigned battery module, but as of the alert, no final fix was available. Owners are instructed to avoid overnight charging, park at least 50 feet from other vehicles or structures, and monitor for further updates from General Motors. The urgency is clear. Fires can break out even after a car has supposedly been made safe. The agency's advisory leaves no room for exceptions. Until the new remedy arrives, every Bolt owner faces the same risk. For those who rely on street parking or who live in multi-unit buildings, the consequences are especially severe. Insurers have begun flagging these vehicles as high risk, and some apartment complexes have banned them from indoor garages altogether. The Bolt recall stands as a stark reminder that an electric vehicle fire hazard does not end with a single repair. Until the engineering is proven, the only safe place is outside, far from anything that can burn. Chrysler Pacifica hybrid owners faced a sudden warning in July 2023 when Stellantis announced a recall covering nearly 24,000 plug-in minivans. The risk came from an improperly formed fuel line that could leak gasoline into the engine compartment. 4 fires have been confirmed, 2 resulting in total vehicle loss. Stellantis moved quickly, promising to replace the faulty fuel line assembly at no cost. Notification letters went out in February 2024. Until the repair is completed, every Pacifica hybrid must be parked outside and away from buildings. The recall instructions are blunt: do not use garages or carports, and do not ignore the warning, even if the vehicle appears to run normally. BMW 3 Series joined the list in March 2026 after the NHTSA posted recall 25V636. Roughly 30,000 BMWs built between 2020 and 2022 were found to have a starter motor that could overheat after thousands of cycles. 9 fires have been linked to this defect. The starter's gear train, lacking proper lubrication, can grind itself down and throw sparks into nearby fluids, oil, or coolant that collects in the engine bay. BMW's recall lead, Klaus Schmidt, explained that the new starter assembly includes a heat shield and improved bearings. Dealers are replacing the part free of charge, but the company expects the full repair campaign to last through the third quarter of 2026. Until then, owners are instructed to park outside and keep their vehicles away from other cars or buildings. For Hyundai Tucson owners, the fire risk comes from a different direction. In February 2024, a recall swept up more than 51,000 Tucson SUVs equipped with an optional tow hitch wiring harness. 6 fires have been documented, 3 resulting in total loss. Rainwater or car wash spray can seep into the harness connector, creating a short circuit that sparks beneath the body and ignites plastic fuel lines. Hyundai's chief engineer, Sung-Ho Lee, pointed to a crimping error during assembly, an oversight that left the connector vulnerable to water. The remedy is a redesigned, sealed harness installed free at the dealer. Until the fix is in place, the message to owners is the same as for every other fire risk recall: park outside, keep the vehicle away from structures, and do not assume the risk is limited to hybrids or electric cars. Gasoline models are just as vulnerable when fuel and sparks meet in the wrong place. Not every vehicle under fire risk scrutiny has a formal recall on file. For owners of the Hyundai Kona, Kia Seltos, Ram 2500 and 3500, and Volvo EX30, the official NHTSA database returns no Part 573 fire recall as of February 2026. This absence leaves many drivers in a gray zone, aware of headlines but unable to find definitive answers when searching by VIN or by model on the NHTSA portal. The Kona and Seltos are named in a broad Hyundai-Kia fire risk advisory that covers nearly 92,000 vehicles, but the notice stops short of assigning a specific recall number or defect description for these models. Instead, manufacturers have issued generic park outside recommendations, urging caution even though federal records show no open investigation or remedy. Ram heavy-duty trucks, despite online rumors and scattered owner anecdotes, show no evidence of a spontaneous fire hazard in the public record. An independent bench test conducted by Northwest University Mechanical Engineering Department found no ignition risk in standard operating conditions for the Ram 2500 and 3500 diesel exhaust system. This finding was cited by industry groups to argue against a recall, and searches of the NHTSA database confirm no active fire risk case for these trucks. Volvo EX30, a new entry in the electric crossover market, also stands outside the recall system. Manufacturer bulletins reference routine safety checks, with no mention of battery defects or park outside advisories. For owners, the lack of documentation can be frustrating. Without an official recall, dealers and service centers have no mandate to act, and the risk remains undefined. The record gap is real, and for these models, the only guidance is to monitor for future updates and stay alert to any changes in official advisories. Inside the Office of Defects Investigation, every recall is weighed not just by engineering urgency, but by economic impact. A Freedom of Information Act request pried loose one of the few glimpses into this closed-door calculus, a redacted cost-benefit memo tied to the Jeep 4xe recall. The numbers are stark. Each fire, when property loss, emergency response, and injury claims are tallied, is valued at $2.5 million. The projected cost to replace every suspect battery cell across the Jeep 4xe fleet approaches $1.9 billion. On one side, engineers argue that even a handful of fires justifies immediate action. On the other, finance officers note the incident rate, just under 0.00003%, is vanishingly low compared to the scale of the fix. The compromise is visible in the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's interim advisories. Instead of grounding all affected vehicles or waiting for a permanent solution, the agency orders owners to park outside and avoid charging. This approach buys time for manufacturers to engineer a remedy while reducing the chance of catastrophic property loss. The analyst at the Office of Defects Investigation is clear: the risk is not theoretical, but the cost of a fleet-wide recall must be justified by evidence and public safety, not just fear. Insurers are not waiting for regulators to settle the debate. State Farm's underwriting bulletin for 2025 to 2026 classifies any vehicle under a park outside order as high risk, triggering a $150 to $300 surcharge on comprehensive policies. All states' filings warn commercial fleet owners of a 5% premium increase for Jeep 4xe and Chevrolet Bolt vehicles until the recalls are closed. Progressive, meanwhile, has begun requiring proof of completed recall repairs before paying out fire claims on these models. For owners, the financial stakes are immediate and personal. The regulatory process may be slow, but the cost of inaction is measured in both dollars and lives. Right now, over 1 million vehicles pose a documented fire risk even when parked and silent. NHTSA warnings aren't hypothetical. They're based on real incidents, real injuries, real homes lost. The margin for error is gone. If your car is on the list, action is not optional. The next fire could be anyone's. Stay alert. Your safety starts with what you do next. Share your experience below and help others stay informed.